So that's basically some of the topics. And just as a quick anecdote, you may wonder how all this got started, is that a couple of years ago, well, more than 3 years ago, I was approached by a senior executive from PepsiCo. And he said, it would be interesting if we could use the phones to do something different for the front line. And we tried to look at options, SMS, and we thought, it's probably not right. With the iPhone, he got an iPhone, I got an iPhone, and we started to talk about it. You know what? Look at the applications that are coming out. It would be interesting for us to have something like that. And he said, it'd be nice if you could create a PowerPoint deck and showcase how an application would look like. And I took the risk. I said, OK. So I took some screenshots of my iPhone. PowerPoint was a great tool for prototyping. I copied, pasted. I went through websites kind of looking for little bits and pieces and putting in my mind a storyline, a storyboard about a person going on the field using this application, this Phantom application, which was purely vaporware. I didn't know, really, it was more of a concept. And I came back, it was 15 slides, and I showcased it back to a couple of senior executives to say, is this what you're meaning? And they said, yes, right on target. Can we see it on a Mac? Could I see it working? I said, well, PepsiCo, we don't have Macs. That's step number one. So I think for me, it was a perfect opportunity to go back and buy a Mac, say, hey, this is my wife. Yeah, really, I really need to learn to use these things. And when I was in undergrad, I was developing on OpenStep, or on the next step, even before OpenStep. And as you know, that's the basis for the Mac OS X. And I picked up a book, and I started to hack away, getting a prototype working on my Mac. And it was a fun experience. I would be on the flights, kind of reading the book, and then I got home and try things out, kind of trying to remember what I used to do before. And when I showcased it back on the Mac, it's just the concept became alive. And then you start getting more pull and saying, can I see it on the phone? Like, OK, the next you see you raising the bar. Now we got it on the phone. Now the executives were so excited. Well, can you change the icons? Can you change this? And they were on showcasing it. And they were drawing up the support for us to come back and really say, can we do it? And they came back and said, do you think we have the information to make this happen? I did some research. My team did some research. We came back and said, yes, we can try it. And just through some rapid iterations, we created a working concept, which was the best thing is that when we got it to work, I put it on my phone. I went back to my house. It was a Friday afternoon. And I recreated the experience that I put in my PowerPoint and figuring out, how is the user going to look at this? And it was working great in my experience. And we started to showcase it. And that's what got us going. So that's our story overall.
So have a seat, David.
Thank you.
So in terms of making that more repeatable, that sounds like the planets aligned, and
Yes.
It sounds frankly kind of lucky that all this happened. I mean, what advice would you give to make this, from a change management perspective, for those of us who want to kind of adopt applications within enterprises? I mean, what's the change management that has to be, what are the critical success factors from a change management perspective? So you had an executive sponsor.
Executive sponsor,
right?
And a very, I would say, animated and extremely supportive and visionary executive sponsor. That's one of the things. I think he didn't want to create the same things faster. He wanted to make it to the next level. So it's not, let me send an Excel report down to a phone. It's really, we make it out like something they can't do today. That's number one. Also, you have to really think about walking in your user's shoes. I think when you're a few degrees removed from the business, it's really easy to be in an ivory tower where you come back with, I think the 5 things you should be doing are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you don't walk in their shoes, it's going to be like, well, you're telling me how to do my job. You don't really understand what the pains I have. And I think you have to understand the pain, and actually not just to say, how do I solve the current pain, but how do you solve it and kind of bring a new capability that's going to be, that will blow them away, and it's going to be much better than what they do today. Because you can say, I can bring you an interactive report on your phone, just what you get today. And the answer is going to be, why are you spending all that money if I already get the data today? Maybe it's painful, but I'm already getting it. You have to give them something they can't do it. And if it's a business value proposition, you'll start getting the pull as well. Mm-hmm. And once you have something ready, I think we've made the mistake before to say, we have the perfect solution, we have talked about it, and we just deploy it. I think you have to really test it out with a group of users, get the feedback, do the course correction, and also use that group of users, friendly users, I might say, because you don't want to be fighting fires like, oh, this thing is not 100% what I want, kind of a thing. You have to be visionary users that will give you some of the good feedback, and they'll be your advocates overall. You know, they'll start creating the pool for you as well, I think. And also think about the infrastructure. You know, it's I mean, it's tough when you're not ready for this and you have to make things or try to figure things as you go. But, you know, from the application distribution, security is critical as well. You're now exposing corporate information up on the internet. But don't think, I think I could be point out and say, well, you're just trying to have fun and doing these apps, right? But really, you have to think about the end-to-end, kind of pick the battles, try to prove it out. You don't have to do everything 100%. So
Roger, what do you, I mean, David, you were talking about infrastructure. I mean, Roger, what have you seen to kind of get the infrastructure? You were way ahead of the curve 3 years ago. I mean, what did you do to kind of get the change management in place? Because it's usually not the technology that's hard. It's usually the change management. Although without getting iOS in place without, you know, version 4, you know, didn't have kind of MDM API, you know. So what's been your experience, Brocade?
You know, this experience is very similar to what David talked about. You know, but the key that you really, when you start talking about change management, you're looking at, okay, how do I repeat this? How do I do this again? Really falls back to, okay, I have this phenomenal lifecycle management system if I'm going to develop apps within my organization for normal enterprise apps. And we have a methodology that goes with that and everything's great. How do we then take that and move that to this new environment where, you know, now we're talking about mobile apps to where we have to be able to move quickly. It's not just about the next version or what you just showed today, but as you're saying, it's okay, what's the next step after that, the next step after that? And so it's I'm going to steal Ohas from you earlier because you really nailed it when you talked about the actual organization infrastructure and actually, you know, making sure that you have the executive sponsorship, that you actually have the users that are going to work through your piloting and be on your steering committee that actually really have a passion for what you're doing and they see where it actually adds value to what you're doing. And, you know, it takes a lot of evangelism. It takes time actually getting out, going to the business units, taking that PowerPoint presentation around, showing them where the opportunities lie and how you can actually enable the way that they're doing their actual productivity today.
Yeah, when I was doing change management at Deloitte, we always would identify on who the critics were. And actually, unfortunately, that's kind of where we would have to really spend a lot of time kind of neutralizing that. So from a critic perspective, I mean, it's typically the security is always one of the kind of areas that there's a kind of a critic there, a concern, a valid one. So, you know, Roger, I mean, you're perfect position there, given you are, you know, CISO, and what's your position there in terms of what are the security concerns that you've had, and how are they overcome?
Well, it's a different landscape today than it used to be. So, you know, it used to be that, oh, it's a security guy, he's going to say no. And you can't do that anymore. I mean, reality, the whole edge that we have in the market is being able to differentiate ourselves now and be ahead of the curve. And so you can't say no, you have to be able to say how, or you have to be able to actually step in and enable with them. And so that's actually been part of that key, is actually, you know, reaching out, not just, you know, information security, but, you know, when we're talking about data protection, we're talking about your legal departments, we're talking about contracts, we're talking about internal audit compliance, and actually bringing all the critics into the same room and bringing them in as part of that steering committee and as part of that group. And yeah, they're the early adopters. They're the ones that you've got to get to buy in and actually, you know, make sure that they actually have an opportunity to try this out first, so they have that first user experience, and so they can be comfortable with it. And, you know, at Brocade, we actually have our legal department on Androids instead of on Blackberries, and that was a huge win to take the Blackberry out of the lawyer's hands.
There's a way.
There you go.
Okay, so in terms of talking about security, I mean, user experience, David, that came across loud and clear from your perspective, how important that is. I mean, certainly that was a theme on a number of speakers this morning, which is, you know, the user experience, and there's a kind of a trade-off. I mean, I think there was a question around security during the infrastructure panel, and Vishy, you know, said yes. I mean, that, you know, it was kind of all layers. But but you could take it to an extreme where it becomes unusable. I mean, how did you guys kind of navigate that trade-off?
I think that's a different skill set than what traditional IT teams have. So from our perspective, it could be considered a gap today in terms, at least from traditional IT teams, in terms of how do you get the right balance on the end user experience on the phones, where it's very interactive, to what the security requirements are. I think there's probably a matrix you can talk about the business value and the complexities. What we're trying to do right now is we're going after what gives us the biggest business value with a reducer of complexities to get going. I think if you try to tackle the toughest problems first, you won't have enough of the lessons learned to get you there. I think there are some other opportunities you can tackle for getting the experiences. And I don't think we have gone through that yet. There are some great technology partners that can help you there they already have had their lessons learned. I think there's just so many things to learn before we get there.
So there's kind of a crawl, walk, and run. Don't start off with the most secure.
You'll probably it'll be a tough project. So answer is we're still trying to learn.
Roger, what are you seeing in Brocade?
I completely agree with that. You've got to reach out and grab the low-lying fruit that actually is going to have you that big win. So now you can actually build that. And from a security perspective, you can't go all the way secure because from my perspective, the only good mobile phone is one that's turned off with the battery taken out. But that's security perspective. So everything on top of that's a compromise. And so that's where you've got to find where your compromise is and make sure of what's the enablement to the business against now we're starting to put this information and we're sharing this information literally with the world. And each one of those is some type of decision. And so it goes back again to governance and what's the benefit to the business for being able to enable those applications, those feature sets.
But when you say governance, that always connotates the centralized kind of model. And here we're moving to a more of an end user kind of model where it's kind of moving to that side of it. So what about training? I mean, in terms of, instead of governance, why don't we look at kind of end user or kind of, training and alignment. I mean, is security training effective in your world?
I absolutely agree with that, and I think it's the most effective. You can put roadblocks up, but as I heard earlier today, how many of you have teenagers and tell your teenager no? The education and actually understanding, what the impact is of what they're doing and that education. And it's a program that we do have at Brocade. And we have an annual IT security awareness training program that actually gives them an understanding of, what's the impact of what you post on Facebook or what do you Twitter about? And, that we do represent our companies when we're on these social networking sites. So the education awareness part of that is key to that. At the same point, whenever you're looking at applications that you're going to be sharing information out to your customers or to the general public, there does still need to be some kind of gating or vetting mechanism for that. And that's where I was using the term governance is that, when you're getting ready to release information to the general public or out, you have to be clear about who actually can do that within the company, or that they have been trained for that. And so the education awareness training that we do, there's additional training that we do for those key individuals that are actually targeted for actually sharing Brocade information out to the community. Education and awareness so that you just know what the impact is of what you're about to say or what you're going to do really helps temper the message when it goes out.
Mm-hmm.